I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the unfamiliar car in our driveway. It was sleek, expensive, and completely out of place in our quiet, middle-class neighborhood. It practically screamed money and arrogance. My stomach tightened. We weren't expecting anyone. As I unlocked the front door, the feeling of dread grew stronger. When I stepped inside, my wife, Lena, was standing near the entrance, looking like a deer in headlights. She was dressed up, far too formally for a weekday evening at home. A sharp blazer, a silk blouse. It was her important meeting outfit. "You're home early," she said, and her voice had a tiny crack in it, just enough to confirm my suspicions that something was very, very off. Before she could stop me or come up with an explanation, I asked the obvious question. "Who's here?" I glanced past her toward the living room, bracing myself. That's my boss," she replied, her gaze darting away from mine, focusing on a spot on the wall. As if summoned by his title, he walked into the hallway from the living room. He was exactly what I pictured. Tall, perfectly tailored suit, a confident, almost predatory smile plastered on his face. He extended a hand without waiting for an introduction from Lena. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, his handshake a little too firm, a classic power move. I pulled my hand back and kept my voice level. "And you are?" He chuckled, unbothered. "Mark," he said, Lena's boss, "a pleasure." It didn't feel like a pleasure. "What are you doing in my house?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. The air thickened. He laughed again, a smooth, practiced sound. "Just dropping off some important work documents for Lena. She's been working so hard. I wanted to make sure she had everything she needed for the weekend." He looked around our home slowly, his eyes lingering on our family photos, our furniture. "Weekends must be very relaxing out here," he added, but the way he said it made my stomach twist into a knot. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation laced with something invasive. Lena jumped in, trying to steer the conversation to safer ground. "Mark, thank you for dropping them off. I'll get right on them." But he wasn't done. He ignored her and looked directly at me, his smile unwavering. Then he turned his attention back to Lena, his voice dropping slightly. "I'll be looking forward to your company again soon," he said, with a pointed look, "especially when you're not so preoccupied." The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The room went completely silent. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a jet engine. I stared at him, my mind racing to process the blatant disrespect. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice low. "Could you repeat that?" He just smiled, a condescending, patronizing expression. "You shouldn't be so sensitive. It's just business." "Leave," I said. It wasn't a request. He didn't move an inch. Instead, he looked at Lena, his tone shifting from suggestive to menacing. "Remember our conversation, Lena. Your position at the company is very important. My support is valuable." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a disrespectful boss overstepping his boundaries. This was leverage. This was a threat. Lena finally found her voice, though it was trembling. "Mark, this isn't the right time." He leaned closer to her, invading her personal space. "Time," he whispered, "is something I control." That's when I moved. I physically stepped between them, creating a barrier. My voice was dangerously quiet. "Get out of my house now." His smug smile vanished instantly, replaced by a flash of cold fury. His true colors were finally showing. "You should be careful," he warned, his voice a low growl. Interfering in company matters could have consequences for her. Then he turned on his heel and walked out, as calm and collected as if he owned the place. The heavy front door closed with a soft click, and the silence he left behind was heavier than any sound. I turned to Lena. She was pale, her arms wrapped around herself. I asked the question I was dreading. "How long has this been going on?" The dam broke. The tears she'd been holding back streamed down her face. "It started as mentorship," she choked out. "He was helping me, giving me opportunities." "When did mentorship start sounding like threats?" I asked, my own anger rising, hot and sharp. "I don't know," she cried. "It just escalated." I felt trapped. I didn't know what to do. "So you brought him here, to our home?" The question sounded harsher than I intended. I thought if he met you, saw you, he'd back off? That things would calm down." I took a deep breath, trying to push my anger down. Lena, predators don't calm down when they're confronted. They double down. That night, neither of us slept. We lay in bed, a cold distance between us, the events of the evening replaying over and over. The next morning, her phone buzzed. It was a message from him. Be in the office at 7 a.m. We have a lot to discuss. She showed it to me, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone steady. I looked at her, then at the message. You're not going alone, I said. When we walked into her office, it was like the night before had never happened. He was there, joking with a colleague, a cup of coffee in his hand. He greeted Lena with a cheerful, "Good morning," and ignored me completely as if I were a piece of furniture. I wasn't having it. I stepped forward. We need to talk about what happened at my house last night. He laughed, turning to me with that same infuriating smirk. I think you're mistaken. Personal lives shouldn't mix with business. It's unprofessional. Coercion isn't business, I shot back, my voice loud enough for others in the open plan office to hear. It's harassment. That word, harassment, changed everything. A few heads popped up over their cubicle walls. His face tightened. Suddenly, a woman from HR, who must have overheard, was walking toward us, her expression serious. Is there a problem here? She asked. That was Lena's opening. With a deep, shaky breath, she pulled out her phone. She handed it to the HR representative, showing her the messages she'd been too afraid to show anyone. The mentorship that turned into late-night demands. The suggestions that were thinly veiled threats. As the HR rep scrolled, the smile on her boss's face finally, blessedly, faded. For the first time, he looked scared. An investigation was started, quietly at first. He stopped messaging Lena. The silence was a relief, but also eerie.